You know, when we picture Vikings, we usually go straight to the fierce warriors, the longships, right? But the real story, the one that's actually way more impressive, isn't about their strength in a fight. It's about their incredible intelligence against an enemy that was far more relentless than any army, the Arctic winter. So let's dive into how they pulled it off. And that, right there, is the mystery we're unpacking today. Seriously, based on everything we know about construction and extreme weather, these simple homes, built in some of the most brutal climates on the planet, they should have been frozen, collapsed ruins in like a few weeks. But they weren't. Not even close. How on earth did they manage to live, raise families, and actually thrive in conditions that would make a modern house just completely give up? Well, the answer isn't some single magic trick. It's a whole brilliant system of quiet, methodical, and just brutally sensible engineering. To really get their homes, you first have to get their enemy. And for the Vikings, winter wasn't just a season. Oh no. It was this hostile, totally unimpressed personality that showed up way too early, stayed way too long, and seemed to genuinely enjoy making life miserable. This right here reveals a super important mindset. See, Vikings weren't superhuman. They hated the cold just as much as we do, but they accepted its cruelty. They knew that in that kind of environment, being too optimistic was a liability, and any little mistake could be your last. Their entire building philosophy started from that one harsh truth. And this highlights a massive difference in philosophy. A modern house, it's built on hope, right? Hope the power stays on, hope the insulation works. A Viking home, it was built on the absolute assumption of total failure. It was designed from the ground up to just deny winter access, not with some big heroic fight, but with this quiet, stubborn intelligence.
Okay, so what was their first move in this Cold War? They didn't build some huge fortress to fight the wind head-on. No, they did something way, way smarter. They hid from it.
By digging their homes partially into the ground, they won half the battle before a single wall even went up. The earth itself gave them natural insulation because, unlike the air, the ground doesn't panic. Its temperature stays pretty stable. This low profile also meant the wind, which is always looking for an easy target, would just kind of pass right over them. And finally, being anchored in the earth made the homes incredibly stable, just sitting there completely unimpressed while storms raged outside. So, building on that super clever foundation, they constructed the home's protective layers. And this wasn't just about putting up walls, it was about creating a kind of natural armor.
Viking walls were these thick, layered systems where every single component had a job. You've got stone at the bottom for a solid base, packed earth to act like a thermal battery, timber for the skeleton, and then this thick layer of turf on top to seal every tiny little gap. Cooled air didn't just have to get through a wall, it had to fight its way through a whole defense system.
I mean, think about it. Our walls are designed to look nice and hide wires. Viking walls, on the other hand, were designed to store and literally remember heat. They were so heavy and dense, they'd soak up warmth from the central fire all day and then slowly release it back into the home all night long. The priority was never looks, it was just surviving.
And the secret weapon in this armor was turf. They basically wrapped their houses in living, breathing insulation. These dense blocks of soil and roots trapped air, smothered drafts, and even acted as a natural fire break. And get this, when snow piled on top, it didn't slide off. It became a free, extra insulating blanket. It is an absolutely brilliant, low-tech solution. The Vikings also totally understood a basic law of physics. Heat rises. So why would you build high ceilings and let all that precious warmth just hang out uselessly near the roof? They didn't. They kept the ceilings low, forcing the heat to stay down where the people actually were. If you were tall, well, you learned to duck. It wasn't poor design, it was an intentional survival strategy. Okay, so the house is sealed up tight. Now let's talk about its engine. At the heart of every single Viking longhouse was a fire. But the genius here wasn't just the fire itself, it was how they used everything it produced, including its most annoying byproduct. Everything, and I mean everything, revolved around a single fire placed right in the middle of the room. This one hearth was the engine for the entire home. It burned almost constantly, not just for warmth, but for cooking, for drying clothes, and it was the gravitational center of their whole social life. Everything was oriented around this one, steady, reliable source of heat. And here's the question any of us would ask, right? Without a proper chimney, wouldn't the house just be an unbearable, smoky mess? And the answer is yes. But the Vikings didn't see smoke as a problem that needed to be solved. They saw it as a tool to be used. This is where our modern perspective completely flips. That smoke drifting through the longhouse was actually performing constant, free maintenance. It cured the wooden beams, which prevented them from rotting. Soot would slowly build up and seal tiny drafts. It made the home totally hostile to pests, and it kept the entire structure from getting damp. The smoke wasn't a flaw, it was a feature.
The final piece of this whole heating system wasn't an object at all. It was the people themselves. See, empty space was a thermal liability, so Viking homes just eliminated it. People, and yes, sometimes even their livestock, were all packed in together. Body heat became a shared resource. Crowding wasn't poor planning, it was an active part of the home's thermal strategy.
So let's put all these pieces together. No single element here is the secret. The real genius of the Viking home is how every single part worked together in this closed-loop system designed for one thing and one thing only: survival. Each component had a very specific job. The earth stabilized the temperature. The turf was its living armor. The fire was the engine. The smoke performed all the maintenance. And the people and animals, they were active components, generating heat. This wasn't just a collection of cool features. It was a fully integrated, resilient system that had no single point of failure.
And that's really the key takeaway here. The goal was never beauty or comfort or perfection in the way we think about it. The goal was resilience, the ability to absorb shocks, to keep functioning when conditions were absolutely terrible, and to just be dependable day in and day out.
Ultimately, the story of the Viking longhouse completely reframes our image of them. They didn't endure the Arctic winter just through sheer toughness. They outthought it. They used observation, patience, and a deep, practical understanding of their environment to design a home that didn't fight winter, but simply refused to let it win.
And this leaves us with a final thought. We live in a world of complex, often incredibly fragile systems that depend on everything going just right. The Viking home was the total opposite, a simple, resilient system built on the assumption that everything would probably go wrong. It really makes you wonder, what lessons in resilience have we forgotten along the way?